What's going on? You're in the Beat Sessions. I'm your host, Mitchell Weary. Please like this video and share it with all of your friends once you've finished enjoying it. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that already. Keith, MB Lee, and I really appreciate all of your support as the channel continues to grow in 2023. We have an excellent time producing this content for all of you. We're happy to see that you're enjoying it. Thank you again for your support. Let's talk about this new record from U2 entitled Songs of Surrender. They released that on March 17th. Nice little Paddy's Day present. This is the band's 15th studio album, kind of. We'll get into that. A lot to talk about here. Their follow-up to 2017's Songs of Experience. I will start this thing off by saying that I love this band. They've meant a lot to me over the years. I'm thrilled to have an opportunity to talk about one of their projects, and I know that I took my sweet time with this thing. I missed you guys over the last 5 days. I apologize for my absence. It's been kind of hectic around here, but I did take my time to digest this thing. 40 songs, so a lot of volume there, but this thing hit me emotionally in a way that I just kind of wasn't expecting. There's my experience in Ireland. If you watch the channel, I've brought it up before. Lived there in 2005. It's the only other place I lived besides Arizona. So it means a lot to me. And what really means a lot to me is the veneration for music over there. And I loved being able to go out, dip into just about any pub, and catch a trad session. You'd have a group of individuals in the corner just rocking out a little bit, setting a little bit of atmosphere. And it was an excellent part of my experience over there. It's one of the best parts for anybody that's looking to travel over there. I think that you will be just shook by, the presence and, how ubiquitous it is. It's everywhere. It's really cool. And so for a band that is larger than life, they've built their reputation on taking a punk and post-punk sound from basements to arenas. And shout out to my good friend Kelly. I've seen this band twice with her. Some of my favorite memories going to those shows with you. Hope you get a chance to see this. It's, experiencing that band in their full magnitude is an amazing thing. But going to Ireland and digesting what music is really about over there, and then getting a project like this from an Irish band makes total sense. And I'm thrilled about it. I think it's amazing, not just the change in the music, but also the way that Bono approached the songwriting process and in rewriting a lot of these. And it's another thing that, caused me to take my time with this record, going back and kind of comparing the lyrics. And I'm not going to jump into that too much as far as the track breakdown, because this thing's already going to be kind of long. But what I love is, the reflections on being in a band, being together for 45 years, right around then, and getting older and having to face down that demon. Getting older it's just kind of shitty. I'll say it. There's things to love and there's things to really cherish and celebrate. But overall, there's the struggle of facing your mortality. And so there's a lot of songs on here. Bono's reworked them because after all these years, his perspective has changed. And I'm so torn between it because there's a big part of me that really likes that. But there's also part of me that feels that art in a lot of ways is sacrosanct. And I feel like, if you want to sit there and continue to try to perfect something, you could spend your entire life trying to make like 5 seconds of a song. I mean, that's really ultimately the reality of that. You have to finish a project. And so, I struggle with that a little bit when it comes to this project, because there are some renditions where I'm like, oh man, they shouldn't have even touched Sunday Bloody Sunday, for example. Shouldn't have even touched it. That's one of the greatest rock and roll intros of all time, and it doesn't show up on that track. And I immediately was just like, oh no, how could you do that? But there's a great number of new versions musically, but I'm liking Bono and that big overarching theme of age and where we're at, and changing these songs to resonate in a different time, because some of these songs written in the 80s and 90s, the world has changed in a lot of ways. And so I appreciate Bono and his efforts to do that with The Edge, because this is a band that I think it's one of the things that annoys people, their constant fight to always be relevant, always be at the top, and they are. I mean, there's a reason they're one of the biggest rock bands in the world. So there's all these positive things and a couple negatives going back and forth. One of the negatives for me is not having one of my favorite rock and roll rhythm sections at work on this thing. I think of Tool. Danny Carey and Justin Chancellor, and I think of Fleetwood Mac, Mick Fleetwood and John McVie. Those are the only other two rhythm sections. Both players are still alive, playing together in those outfits and rocking out. Other than that, I mean, Adam Clayton and Larry Mullen Jr. are one of the greatest rhythm sections in rock and roll history, period. And the fact that they're still doing it together is amazing. But sadly, Larry is physically unable to perform right now. I really hope this band doesn't tour in 2023. I hope they give him the time to heal up. After all these years, that dynamic that's there in their live shows, I just can't imagine who else you would bring in to replace him and how that person would vibe with Adam the way that Larry does. Just one of the things that I loved about seeing them, just so special, those guys, the energy, just the reciprocity from one another. And this is an album that, you know, you get a little bit of Adam showing up to do some bass work. But for the most part, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, anybody, but I read that, you know, Larry did a little bit, but for the most part, it was the Edge, because he was at the helm on production on this thing, going back and working with older recordings of Larry and just kind of working them into electronic drum loops. And so it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that a project that makes so much sense, considering my experience, what I've seen in life, and what this band does, comes at the cost of losing two incredible musicians, two people that are such a life force behind this outfit. And so it makes it feel like a Bono and Edge side project. It doesn't really feel like a full U2 album for that reason. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that, you know, in order to achieve this goal, to strip these songs down the way that they did, you know, you kind of have to remove yourself from Adam and Larry. You know, this album put together through COVID while Larry was struggling with his health, and coincides with the release of Bono's memoir as well. That came out back in November. So there's a lot going on here where, like, it makes sense. Like having the time, reflecting on, you know, wanting to change a lot of these, you know, compositions for quite a while now, because that's something they talk about as well. But just not having that driving force in Larry and having an absent, and it almost kind of feels like they just went along their way and left him out of it. It's really bumming me out, and I'm not sure like what the future holds for this band as far as this project. You know, he's on the cover, he's on all the credits, obviously, but you know, as far as actually being there and, you know, working through the process and working with all the production, both Adam and Larry pretty much left out of this entire thing. And it's that aspect of it kind of bumming me out. I mean, and you can feel it a little bit in the music. I feel like the percussion and the rhythm on all these arrangements, if there is any, is super solid. It's not bad, but I love those two cats so much. And that's really affecting me and ultimately wanting to purchase this thing, I think. But it kicks off with One off of Octung Baby. Great song, moody and introspective. I really like this version and the way that it comes right out of the gate and really establishes what this experience is going to be like. Like, this isn't just us simply doing simple acoustic renditions of our songs, which is, you know, kind of where I was a little bit going into this thing. Like, I wasn't like super pumped up about it for a new U2 album, not as much as I would have been with brand new material. But once that song hit, you know, and as this thing started to go on, because I really like the Edge's track selection. It's like each band member gets 10 songs for collections of 10 tracks. So it makes sense. But I really like the way that he opens up with One, moves into Where the Streets Have No Name. One of the biggest tracks off of Joshua Tree. Really pretty string arrangement on that. Maintains its restraint and production. Nice electronic element as well. Stories for Boys off of Boys, your third track. Piano driven, very minimal. Like the way that song is working. A single, 11 O'Clock TikTok, makes your fourth song. It's got this full instrumentation. It's, a couple arrangements are going to kind of work like this. But this song is, it's interesting. It's got, like, I love the piano. It's got this bustling kind of like 50s, 60s pop feel. Kind of thinking like, that song on Broadway. Like it's kind of like the vibe that it had, that it gave to me. Out of Control, your fifth song, another track off of Boy. I like that. I like that Edge is working with some of that earlier stuff. I dig the acoustic guitar on this track, and it's got this punk drive. And with that early U2 stuff especially, it just makes sense. I almost don't know how you would accomplish an acoustic track like without the drive, and especially with that kind of song. Beautiful Day, your sixth track off of All You Can't Leave Behind. Great piano rendition, light percussion that works in. I dig the reverb in the chorus. It kind of like echoes on the piano. It's very pretty. Bad is your seventh song. This is a song that this song means so much to me, and this version is incredible. This really blew me away. This was the first moment where I had to take a moment, and it was a good moment. But just reflections on aging, the way that Bono changed the lyrics into a first person perspective, and the original being like about a heroin addiction. And I laugh because I played that song after I graduated from high school, going to my post grad celebration. It was like 10 minutes from my house, and the Unforgettable Fire was in my CD player. And so I threw on Bad. It just like musically felt like the right song for the moment. And so just reflecting on that change in the lyrics, approaching my birthday, being almost 40, I'll be 39 in 2 weeks. And it just shook me. I was really blown away by Bono's, choice of perspective and the way that he changed that song. And really just one of the highlights of this album for sure. Every Breaking Wave is another incredible song off of Songs of Innocence, and one of my favorite tracks. A nice deep cut, a great selection, pretty piano that captured this sadness, where like the original has this kind of like optimism, I guess I feel in the music, but there's such a desperation. And that song coming right after Bad, like I had to take my second time out. It was just like, oh man. I just like got all these thoughts churning in my head, friends that I, haven't seen in a while, people from Ireland and all this stuff. And like both those songs back to back are pretty strong emotionally. I really dig that part of the record. Walk On is your ninth track off of All That You Can't Leave Behind. It's really acoustic driven, bit of piano that works in. Not my favorite. That's one of those big tracks that I love the original on that, and it's one that I felt really didn't necessarily translate well. Pride, acoustic vocal intro, builds with these textures, guitars and harmonies, but another one where I'm like, oh, the original is just so good, and it's just such a banger that it's like I said, not every song is going to work on this thing, and it's one of the beefs that I have with this project. Larry is putting together your second collection of songs. Who's Gonna Ride Your Wild Horses leads that thing off of Octung Baby. Nice alternative acoustic version of that song. I really dig that particular version. Get Out of Your Own Way from Songs of Experience. I dig the island feel. That's something that's kind of prominent on this record. You get this world percussion, this kind of like light, breezy island feel on a lot of these renditions. And it's one of the things that, I failed to bring this up, but, you talk about like the reworking of these songs, and I did have a feeling that, going into it, there would be more of these tracks like reimagined in different ways. There's definitely a consistency and a feel, and there's like a folk feel that's driving this thing. And I feel like the vibe off this particular track is a strong mood that you're getting on a lot of other compositions on this track. I feel like that those are really the two dominant moods on this thing. Stuck in a Moment that you can't get out of. Acoustic riff is the main musical element here. Similar feel to Get Out. Red Hill Mining Town off of Joshua Tree. That is one of my favorite U2 songs. Slightly more beat, excuse me. I love the horn arrangement that works in on this thing. It's very fun. It's got that classic pop feel. And that's another thing. I would say that like your third most predominant genre feel is kind of this interesting classic pop feel. Think of like 40s, 50s pop, a little bit of strings, a little bit of horns. It's very interesting. Ordinary Love is your fifth song. That is off of the Mandela soundtrack, if you're not familiar with that song. Sets a dark mood, really like Bono's voice on this particular track. Sometimes You Can't Make It on Your Own is your sixth song from How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb. Very pretty with the piano arrangement. I dig that. How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb. That's hilarious. I know I just said that. If you want to laugh about it, I'm too far into this review to stop doing it. I'm chuckling about it myself. Invisible, your seventh song, is a single, has a brilliant dynamic between the piano and guitar, and this is one of the things that I really enjoyed about this record. When from a production standpoint, when you're getting this nice balance. It's one of the things that's really working to this album's strength as a whole. Dirty Day is your 8th song off of Zooropa. This is a highlight for sure. This version is awesome. The strings are absolutely dope. A little bit cello. You get these just like sharp cuts that feel very Beatlesque, psychedelic feel, a little bit of that kind of like Neapolitan feel, a little bit of that 40s and 50s pop kind of vibe as well. An amazing version of that song. The Miracle is your 9th track from Songs of Innocence. Love the island feel again on this particular song. Acoustic, slightly pop driven, very easy to listen to. City of Blinding Lights off of How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb. Piano driven, very pretty version of that song as well. Vertigo is one that I didn't think that it translated well. This is going to start off of Adam's Collection, which oddly enough, as the bass player, I think that his stretch of songs is probably the weakest stretch. Not that it's a bad collection of songs, but it's just I think that they're songs that the majority of them need that big stadium feel. Vertigo, it just kind of felt like a demo. Honestly, these folk strings work in as it builds. It gets a little better, but starting off, it just feels like a little too raw. And that's a matter of opinion there. I'm sure some of you might like it. I still haven't found what I'm looking for. Your second song keeps a similar feel with that minimal approach as far as Vertigo. Electrical Storm is your 3rd song. That comes from the best of U2 90 through 2000, which was kind of a weird, bizarre collection of songs. And this is like this is an interesting version. You got this like piano ballad instrumentation. It builds in the second half, but this is a song that I just like, given what it's doing originally, I'm not super thrilled about this version, nor am I super thrilled about the version of The Fly off of Octoon Baby. That's one of my favorite songs off that record. It's interesting. It takes on this loungy world feel. I don't not like it, but I think the original is much better. If God Will Send His Angels, your 5th song off of Pop, keeps the focus on the minimalism, vocal, piano, nice rendition of that song. Desire is your 6th track off of Rattle and Hum. I really like that Adam chooses to work with some rattle and hum tracks, even if like his selection isn't necessarily translating well. Again, I like his song choice. Desire, just like it feels like an acoustic arrangement. But it's it's not better than the original in my opinion. Until the End of the World is your 7th track off of Octoon Baby. Light, acoustic driven, world feel, but again, that's a big track. That's just a big record in its entirety, and it's another track that just kind of fell short for me. Song for Someone, your 8th song off of Songs of Innocence. Acoustic piano production is I love the way those two come together again. Another nice element there. It's subdued. It's really a nice the two instruments are a great complement to each other, but then there's a part of the song, like as it moves in, the piano comes in really strong, and I really like when it takes hold and has that stronger presence. Have All I Want Is You off of Rattle and Hum. Light organ, little bass, slow build. Wasn't crazy about the version of Desire, but I definitely am liking this version of this Rattle and Hum song, and I like the way that the drums build in other components, of a fuller composition, all things considered, on this thing. And then Peace on Earth is your final song. That song is always very, very difficult to listen to. I think that's for a band that has a general message of being very uplifting and very positive and trying to see, some type of light at the end of the tunnel. That this song was written the day of the bombing in Oma, and you can just feel how broken Bono is in the lyrics, and the rendition that they work with on this. I think it just takes on an incredible level of power that the original's powerful, but this new one is one of those shining moments where I'm like, wow, you really took a good song and you made it really special. Loving that version of the song. And then Bono's Collection is going to cap this thing off. With or Without You is going to lead that off. Definitely not as good as the original. Stay, Far Away So Close off of Zooropa. Piano and vocal, guitar works in with light electro elements. Dig that particular track. Sunday Bloody Sunday, your 3rd song. Again, no drum intro. I'm not buying it. It's definitely not as good as the original. Lights of Home is your fourth track off of Songs of Experience, acoustic driven, light percussion. I like this version of this song. Your fifth song, Cedarwood Road, off of Songs of Innocence, is acoustic. I really like the harmonies and the way they build it on the chorus here. It beefs up in the coda, and I really like the little piano that comes in as well. I Will Follow, your sixth song off of Boy, great track, one of my favorites. It got this trad feel, and like I'm loving the feel on this record, but I wish I could just see this song live. This is the type of song where I'm like, if you had a chance to see these guys in a pub in a corner, perfect for a trad session. Two Hearts Beat is one. Your seventh song off of War, I absolutely love the 90s pop and R&B feel. Honestly, it sounds like they were like, what should we do with this track? And Groove is in the Heart by Delight just came on, and they're like, oh yeah, that's what we're going to do with this track. I shit you not. That is exactly what this song sounds like. I love it. It made me chuckle. I think you'll enjoy it. Miracle Drug off of How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb. Light World percussion, acoustic elements driving this thing. Like that version. The Little Things That You Give Away, very powerful song from Songs of Experience. Pretty acoustic edition of this song, basically acting as the penultimate track. And then if you have a song called 40 and you put out an album with 40 tracks, yeah, the song 40 should probably be your 40th song. And it is your final song. Interesting version. Piano takes over for the bass. I really like Adam on that song. And so the original, not quite, I should say this version, not quite as solid as the original. But that's going to wrap this thing up. Honestly, a lot to love here. If you're a YouTube fan, definitely stream this thing. It'll probably take you a little bit to get through it all. But ultimately, I'm going to have to vinyl pass on U2. I never thought I'd say that. But pretty much all of these songs, minus like a couple of the singles, they're already in there, and the majority of those versions, I love them more. I love the full rock and roll sound, and I love the way that they fit into those collections on those albums as well. And for those reasons, I'm taking a pass. But for those of you who decide to dabble in this, I really hope you enjoy this project. Enjoy the rest of your week. Stay tuned throughout the week for more album reviews. I'll try to bring you a few more things before we get into Depeche Mode on Friday. Y'all take care of yourselves. This has been the Beat Sessions.